What I was saying, that in general, kinds of minds. So there are different, I don't know quite what to think about individual instances, but kinds of minds. What I was talking about was mainly types of different minds, types of cognitive systems. Now, for individuals, you raise a really interesting point, which is I call them selflets, which are the kind of the thin slices of experience. You have a self, and then the different slices of it are the selflets, and you can look at it as special relativity, bread loaf, sliced into pieces, that kind of thing. I think what's interesting about asking that question about the self and what is the through line is what's really important there is to pick a vantage point of an observer. Again, kind of akin to what happens in relativity. You have to ask from whose perspective. So one of the things about being a continuous self is that other observers can count on your behaviors and your properties staying more or less constant. So the reason that we identify, oh yes, you're the same person as you were before, is basically nobody cares that you have the same atoms or you don't, or the cells have been replaced. What you really care about is that this being, I can have the same kind of relationship with them that I had before. In other words, they're consistent. I can expect the same behaviors, the things that I think they know, they still know, and so on. And so that of course in our human lives often breaks down because humans grow from being children to being adults. All their preferences change. The things that they remember and the things that they value change. In our own lives, we sometimes change, right? And that's a much more important change. Are you the same person, even though if all your material components remain the same, but you changed all your beliefs, all your preferences, would you still be the same person, right? So I think what we mean when we say the same is not about the matter of it all. It's about what kind of relationship we can still have, and what do I expect from you behavior wise, and so on. Now, the latest work that I just published a couple of days ago looks at what does that mean from the perspective of the agent themselves, and this idea that you don't have access to your past. What you have access to are memory engrams, traces of past experience that were deposited in your brain and possibly in your body that future you is going to have to interpret. And so that leads to a kind of scenario where you treat your own memories as messages from your past self. The idea then that is that those memories have to be interpreted. You don't necessarily know what they mean right away because you're different. You're not the same as you were, right? Especially over long periods of time. And this comes out very starkly in organisms that change radically, like caterpillars to butterfly. So memories persist from caterpillar to butterfly, but the actual detailed memories of the caterpillar are of absolutely no use to the butterfly. It doesn't eat the same stuff. It doesn't move in the same way. It has a completely different body, completely different brain. You can't just take the same memories. And so I think what happens in biology is that it is very comfortable. In fact, it depends on the idea that the substrate will change. You will mutate your cells. Some cells will die. New cells will be born. Material goes in and out. Unlike in our computational devices, the material is not. You're not committed to the fidelity of information the way that we are. In our computation, you are committed to the salience of that information. So you will need to take those memory traces and reinterpret them for whatever your future situation is. In the case of the butterfly, completely different. In the case of the adult human, somewhat different than your brain when you were a child. But even during adulthood, the context, your mental context, your environment, everything changes. And I think you don't really have an allegiance to what these memories meant in the past. You reinterpret them dynamically. And so this gives a kind of view of the self, kind of a process view of the self, that what we really are is a continuous dynamic attempt at storytelling, where what you're constantly doing is interpreting your own memories in a way that makes sense about what, a coherent story about what you are, what you believe about the outside world. And it's a constant process of self-construction.